can't trust the media, they're all full of lies. Once you know a little bit, all hope in you dies. Live free or die. Live free or die. Live free or die. Live free or die.
Hello everyone. Welcome to Hardfire Television on the Brooklyn Free Speech Network. My name's Cameron Weber. I'll be your host today. With me I have Alex Merced. Alex, welcome again to Hardfire.
Thank you for having me on the show again, Cam.
Sure, Alex. By the way, we're celebrating our 10th anniversary of the Hardfire show.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, Gary Popkin produced it for 7 years and did about 100 shows, 150 shows. I've produced it for 3 years and have done about 15 shows. So hopefully I can catch up to Gary eventually.
We'll work on that.
Yeah, we'll work on that. So, right, Libertarian Issues in Focus. Today we have on our show the Libertarian candidate for Comptroller of New York City. The Comptroller, Alex is running for Comptroller, and the Comptroller is basically the Chief Financial Officer for the city, right?
That's correct. Basically, the office of the Comptroller of New York City really has three main responsibilities. That is, one, to audit the policies of New York City and make recommendations on how to do those policies better.
Yeah.
The second responsibility is to provide the municipal financing in order to run the day-to-day operations of New York City, which requires someone to actually have some financial sophistication in dealing with investment banks to do so.
Yeah.
And three, they sit on a board that makes decisions regarding the New York City pension system, which is where my campaign has focused on.
Right.
Because those last two functions require a lot of financial knowledge to be able to ask the right questions to get the right answers, and neither the Republican candidate Michael Faulkner, who's an ex-pro football player, or our current comptroller Scott Stringer really have any financial experience to be asking the right questions because they don't have the right experience.
And we're going to cover that. So today we'll be discussing New York City's financial situation. Yeah. And I wanted, before I forget, Alex is very good with social media, right?
Yes, I get around. So there's a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Alex Merced. There's my website for when I'm not campaigning, alexmerced.com. And then you can find a lot of great materials there for just general libertarian knowledge. But far as the campaign goes this year, that you can find what I have to say over there at alexmerced4ny.com.
alexmerced4ny.com. And I saw you did a 3-minute video, about a 3-minute video where you discuss the comptroller position and what you can bring to that. So, and that's available again at alexmerced4ny.com. Yeah. So I recommend people if you want to share Alex's idea in a 3-minute format, check out Alex's 3-minute promotional piece on your Comptroller campaign.
And I've also posted several other videos going over many of the things that we'll probably be discussing today.
Yeah. So, and you have information about yourself and on libertarian ideas in your social media, and you've also been active in social media for the Libertarian Party itself.
Yeah, for about a decade now.
For about a decade now, yeah. Yeah, time flies. What I want, we just discussed this New York Times article that came out. Mary Williams Walsh, Carl Russell, on June 20th. New York City pensions are still in crisis, and I'm going to try to show this graph. So basically, New York City goes broke in 1975, and the pension contributions as a share of New York City's budget is 8% when the city's bankrupt. Then you have the dot-com boom. Okay, here you have the dot-com boom, where the city now is getting a lot of revenues. Then you have the dot-com crash. So here during the dot-com boom, we increased pension contributions and increased pensions. And then the dot-com crash, and now we're back up to 11% of the budget is back higher than it was when New York City was bankrupt.
Yep. So to put into perspective, again, just what are pensions in the first place, the pension fund of New York City is what funds the retirement of New York City workers, firefighters, police officers, teachers. And the money that's to be put in there basically every year they have to calculate how much money needs to go in that fund based on how long they expect these pensioners, these retirees to live, how much they expect the market to perform. And what happened is that they've been assuming 7%
Exactly.
as the benchmark for as how much the market return going to be. The reason for that was because interest rates were much higher in the 80s. You could get like 8% in your savings account, but that's no longer the case.
No, it's not. It's
No.
not the case. And that 7% is what all pension funds,
And
all
across the country.
right. So we're touching on issues that are in fact even greater than New York City.
Correct. So right now across the country,
We're just a huge mirror, a big, New York City's even worse. But,
correct, because across the country, and this is based on numbers from back in 2015, across the country, looking at 1.3 billion of unfunded pension liabilities. Now, what does that mean, unfunded liabilities? It means just based on the money we have put in there today, and if we keep contributing based on the way we've been calculating up till now, we're going to be short $1.3 billion on all these retirements. How do you fill that gap? There are three ways you fill that gap. You put in more money, which is either means you have to increase taxes or cut services, which is you've seen happen in other places across the country where they've cut firefighters and had to close down fire departments and police departments, which slows down response time, which actually causes human life. If response times go from 30 seconds to 5 minutes, that could mean someone's life because we are not addressing this fiscal issue. But also another way is you increase taxes, and that means more money out of your paycheck when life already costs enough as it is.
Yeah.
And the longer we wait, the bigger that gap gets, the bigger these possibilities become.
Yeah, this New York City or this New York Times article says that, let's see, as a share of the budget, we have long since passed fiscal crisis levels. In other words, we were at 8% in bankruptcy in 1975, and now we're up to 11%.
Yep, and basically last year, actually, in the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2016, June 30th is my birthday, so there'll be a new fiscal report on my birthday this Friday. There was a report that said that New York City pensions are in risk of operational failure because they only returned a little over 1%.
Exactly.
And that's way less than that 7% benchmark.
So I'm kind of I used to be chief financial oversight for the U.S. State Department, where I responded to audits. And so how on earth has New York City passed audits assuming the 7% return when in fact it hasn't had a 7% return, and a 7% return has not been possible? I know Princeton University endowment gets the 7%. I don't know how they do it, but they're lucky.
It's all about timing. For example, the fund actually was performing sometimes double digits. I mean, there were years where 16%, but a lot of this was prior, leading up to 2008, these bubble years. But the problem is
the easy money years,
correct,
like the .com and crash. Yeah.
That really gets into the 7% benchmark, because what happens is when you have a higher benchmark, it also means that that portfolio, the people who manage those portfolios, they have to try to hit that benchmark, which means they have to make riskier investments, which means in bubbly years, yeah, you'll get a 16% return, but also means you'll have like a negative 16% return in years like 2008. So the idea is with a lower benchmark. So I'm advocating of maybe having a discussion of maybe bringing that benchmark down to 5%. It does mean that when you calculate the contribution, it means a bigger contribution today, but it'll mean less contributions tomorrow. Because you put in a little bit more today, you might overfund it, but that means you don't have to put it, you'll put in less, and you save taxpayers money tomorrow. You save the possibility of having to cut services. You save the possibility of having to cut benefits. You protect everybody by having more conservative assumptions going into calculating those pension payments.
Yeah. Let me ask, so what, Scott Stringer is the current comptroller.
He is the current comptroller.
And I understand he's a popular politician.
Well, he's used the office of comptroller really to set himself up for a run for mayor. So again, this pension money, that's people's retirement money, but he's been using it to make political statements. Just a couple of examples. Recently, they've made an effort to say, hey, we're going to take all your pension money and invest it into green energy products. While on paper that sounds very noble, but one, energy sector is a risky sector to begin with,
Yeah.
and then the energy sector is even riskier. You take a look at companies like Solar City and Solyndra and the problems that they've had over the last several years.
It's dependent upon government subsidies, which can go away.
Correct. So he's taking people's retirement money so that way he can make a statement and by himself points with his progressive base so that way he can set himself up for a future mayoral race. And he is playing with people's retirement money. And that's not the only example of that. He's done that in regards to foreign policy by saying, okay, we're going to move money out of people who deal business with these people or that people or people who put out this kind of information, which is all fine and good. But at the end of the day, the focus of the comptroller should be making sure that the pensions are funded so that way taxpayers aren't on the hook to make catch-up payments. Because over the next several years, we are on the hook to make $1 billion of extra catch-up payments into the pension system because of the shortfall. And that's not even, and that's $1 billion. That's $1 billion that could be going to either a tax cut to put some more money in your pocket, or to fix a road in your neighborhood, or putting your kids in school. Instead, it's being used to make shortfall because no one is having a conversation about this issue. And I mean, it has consequences. The New York City Teamsters Union last year actually had to file for bankruptcy. They actually, it's the first time that anyone's had to file with the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. You had people who were retired who were collecting around $1,500.
Teamsters went bankrupt then.
Yep, they were collecting $1,500 a month from their retirement, and now are collecting $600. That's what's on the table. So when I say, when people discuss, we may have to adjust benefits. I mean, what would you rather have? $1,500 a month go to, let's say, $1,300 a month, or $1,500 a month go to $600 a month, like what happened to the Teamsters.
Right.
The longer we postpone this discussion,
So what your solution then is? We have to address
we have to address the assumptions because we
have to address the assumptions, but also the payouts.
Everything. Basically, it's going to be a mix of all the above. So it's a mix of adjusting the budget and where we spend elsewhere. It's a mix of asking, basically, we need to fill that gap, and it's going to be a mix of revenue, cutting the budget, and adjusting pension, because it's such a large gap. You can't leave anything off the table. But the longer we wait to address it, the bigger that hole falls.
Strigger's not addressing it.
No, because he's not a financial person.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. Is in your promotional video, you say you have Wall Street experience, 10 years of Wall Street experience that Stringer doesn't have, and you can bring that experience to the comptroller's position.
I've worked for the last 10 years training people in finance. I've trained people who actually have worked with the pensions of New York City. I have trained people at all levels and in all positions in the financial industry to get perspective on how the whole supply chain works. While Scott Stringer has really just been running one campaign to the next. He basically started out as a clerk for like a city council person or a state legislator, then went to a failed run for public advocate, then ran for borough president of Manhattan, has been the borough president of Manhattan for a while, which is a position that doesn't really do much, especially nothing that really relates to fiscal issues in a serious way.
They're good at putting their name on signs and on buildings and bridges and
cut ribbons and stuff like that. I mean, this is why we have great candidates like Brian Waddell who are running to eliminate the position of borough president. He's actually running for borough president of Manhattan.
Right.
But
he's a close friend of yours.
He is a close friend. He was my campaign manager when I ran for U.S. Senate. But bottom line is, he doesn't have. Basically, he's just been running for office pretty much as long as he's been working, and that's not necessarily experience. It's going to solve
he doesn't
issues
have any he doesn't have any financial industry experience, but yet he's the comptroller for the city.
And then the Republicans aren't putting up an alternative because their alternative is Michael Faulkner, who is a ex-pro football player and a reverend. Both noble professions, but does not give you experience to address the pension issue, to give you the perspective, the understanding of the issue, to really strike at the heart of the issue. Because again, it's not just about filling the gap. Okay, I mean, yes, we need to fill the gap, the numbers.
Yeah, the Manhattan Institute says that we're 150.
Yeah, so basically, when I started out this campaign,
$142 billion unfunded liabilities. 140. How are we going to pay that back, Alex? How are we going to get the $142 billion?
The first step is the assumptions, because if you don't fix the assumptions, if we keep operating with the same assumptions we have now, we could just put forth the money, we can cut the services and cut the budget required, we can adjust benefits, we can ask for more taxpayer money, but it won't change the fundamental mismanagement of the money if you don't change the assumptions. So that's where I want to focus first. You need to fill that gap, and we need to talk about how...
Honestly, You need
Yeah.
to address it honestly.
We need to have a discussion about it. No one's having that discussion at all. Again, as comptroller, you're only one member on the board. I can't unilaterally change these things, but I can begin that conversation.
Yeah, that's in your promotional campaign film. You say that the comptroller is to secure financing needed for the city's day-to-day operations. How can the comptroller do this? Isn't the city council delegated the right to set taxes and budgetary spending? In other words, to run up the deficits.
Oh, correct.
And isn't the administration or the mayor's office responsible for tax collection? How much fiscal discipline can a comptroller bring to New York City's government?
Basically, the comptroller's biggest tool is transparency. Now, regarding that statement from my video, that was mainly focused on a power of the comptroller where they get involved in the debt issuances of New York City. So,
okay.
So basically, when New York City issues debt or bonds, they have to work with investment banks, and in basically, being that someone who I understand Wall Street, I understand how the fees are set up and how all that's worked out, that I feel like I could be in a position to negotiate favorable terms for New York City and working with investment banks.
Oh,
to
good.
save taxpayer money.
Alex, we're working on $1 million capital project at our co-op. Maybe you can help us get some financing.
I can at least connect you with people.
Yeah, maybe.
But I mean, I've worked in the industry, so I know people. I know how that works. So the idea is that I can.
You feel you can work
negotiate.
with the city council on
Well, it wouldn't necessarily-
on cutting.
Well, what I could do is I could create reports to shed light
Exactly.
on the problems,
Right.
and then make those recommendations. And then it's up to the people to put pressure on city council. But I
Right.
can provide the people with the information and the power,
Yeah.
with the power of knowledge to make those. Because again, the comptroller doesn't change policy. That's why I say, as a libertarian, if you don't necessarily agree with libertarians, if you don't agree with me on whatever policy that you don't agree with libertarians on, it doesn't matter. Because as a comptroller, I can't change policy, but I can bring transparency. And if you're looking for a fiscal watchdog, someone who's independent of the Republicans and Democrats,
Right.
who better than a libertarian in this particular office?
What you're saying is that Stringer is using his position and the ability to pull the purse strings to promote his a progressive agenda, which is not fiscally responsible.
Yeah, which promoting a progressive agenda is fine if that's his prerogative, but he shouldn't be doing it with other people's money.
Right.
And two, also the fact that he is a Democrat. You know, he may do some token trying to play watchdog with de Blasio, but again, he's I feel like he's asking the questions he asks and the concerns he raises are shallow and not addressing the really deep issues. Why? Because again, you don't necessarily want, if you're in the Democrat Party or you're in the Republican Party and you're looking to work your way up, you're not going to ruffle feathers too much because you don't want to necessarily upset the party infrastructure. That's why in a watchdog position like comptroller, you want someone outside of the two-party apparatus, someone who has no problem ruffling the feathers of Republicans and Democrats, and that's a libertarian.
Saying that your proposal is not fiscally responsible.
I can call them out. That's the thing, and then there's no reason for me not to do so.
Good. And I looked up the duties of the comptroller from the comptroller's official page, and one of the duties is promoting policies that enhance city government's commitment to efficiency, integrity, and performance for all New Yorkers. So that's how do you measure government's efficiency, integrity, and performance? How does the comptroller do that?
You have to come up. That's part of the whole audit process. So basically, the comptroller has audit policies.
Yeah.
The way you have to do that at the beginning of the audit process is to figure out how you're going to measure certain things. Like how do you measure a quality school? How do you measure the performance of a housing project? Those are things that need to be workshopped, and I will take very seriously in reaching out to policy experts to figure out what are the best ways to measure performance of these policies.
How do you measure things that really the government shouldn't be doing in the first place?
Well,
how can you do that?
I can't change as a comptroller. I can't change whether they do them or not. So regardless of what my personal view is on whether they should or shouldn't be doing it, what I can do is at least give a highlight on what's not being done well. And if it's not being done well, it can be up to the voters to decide if they want to change what the responsibilities of government are. But I can at least give them the information to start making those decisions by showing them maybe comparing it to how it works elsewhere. So showing the results from New York City compared to other places that maybe have adopted more libertarian reforms. Again, we create the reports and we can create the way. Basically,
so
we
you're
can
looking
introduce
at
those
best
comparisons.
practices. You
Correct.
can look at best practices like Texas.
Correct. So
has a good accountability system.
You would want comparative analysis in the report, so that way people can see what the alternatives are. And again, who the comptroller is going to play a role in like what comparative analysis gets played. Are they comparing it to sort of a worser case scenario to say it looks better than it actually is, or are you comparing it to someone that's actually doing it better to realize what we could be doing better? So depending on who's in office, they're going to choose what you're comparing it to, and I'm going to always try to look for who's doing it the best and comparing what we're doing to who's doing it the best.
Very good, and you can promote that with your social media skills.
Well, my social media know-how will definitely give me some ability to help communicate with the people of New York.
Yeah.
And it's not just communicating with the people of New York, but also being able to bring the unions, the workers of New York City to the table for their benefit as well, because they're taxpayers as well. They are also on the hook when it comes to filling this pension liabilities. I want to bring everyone to the table. I want to protect everyone.
Yeah. Have you been reaching out to the unions?
I've been making efforts to reach out to different organizations and try to schedule opportunities to speak at different organizations.
Yeah.
Because it's an issue.
It's a hard truth, though. It's a hard truth, but ignoring this hard truth is harder in reality. Again, taking a look at what happened to the New York City Teamsters Union, you could. I mean, and the city now is paying more. So as a larger percentage than when the city went bankrupt.
So what that means is that once upon a time, 7 cents of every dollar New York City spent went to the pensions. Now it's 11 cents out of every dollar. So that's 4 cents of every budget dollar that's no longer being used on things that maybe you care about, whether they're roads, schools,
police,
infrastructure, police, fire department,
garbage,
the
quality of the roads,
all sorts of things.
Also, under the duties of the comptroller, it says that ensuring transparency and accountability in setting prevailing wage and vigorously enforcing prevailing wage and living wage laws. What does that mean exactly?
It's again, it's all about auditing. So basically, their job is to make sure that the policies, because at the end of the day, comptroller doesn't check the policies. City council does. So that's why I encourage you, if you want libertarian policies in New York City, please look at your libertarian city council candidates and your libertarian mayoral candidate, because they can change the policies.
We just had Aaron Comey on the show.
Yes, and Aaron's a great guy.
You and Aaron could work together to reduce.
We're very good friends.
Yeah, I know he's interested in social justice issues, victims' crime issues, and so where would you, what cuts would you recommend to spending? I don't mean to get to the hard truth, but
bottom line is, I would first,
I would
first audit and do the reports. Now I hope Aaron can do, basically, I know he's looking towards cutting like Rikers Island, and bottom line is first you got to prioritize your resources. Once you know what the priorities of your resources are and you identify that, then you can identify where areas to cut. So part of the first thing that should happen, because if we just say this is what we want to cut, the people of New York City are going to feel like they're no longer part of the process.
Right.
So we need to go out and reach out to the people of New York City and say, what is your priorities? And once they identify their priorities.
Like the town hall kind of thing.
Yes, and then you can identify what are the low-end priorities, and that's where you can identify where to cut. This is where Devin Balkin, our public advocate candidate, comes in, because he wants to use open source technology to help allow people of New York City to participate. That'll allow us to get the feedback from people in New York City to identify what are those priorities for people in New York City, to figure out what are the areas that are low priority, where we'll identify the areas where we can cut without necessarily cutting the top priorities of your average New Yorker, and really find ways that we can work together to move to a more libertarian place, but also a place that allows participation of your average New Yorker.
I would start with the corporate cronyism.
Of course. Of course.
Subsidies to very wealthy companies.
Yeah.
The economic development and entertainment budget for the mayor's office.
As a libertarian.
Just aggrandization of the political elite.
And that's where getting rid of the borough, the office of the borough president comes into the play, because they get a $4 million budget, and most of what they do is ceremonial. So a lot of that money
is ceremonial.
It's
patronage. It's New York City, famous New York State patronage.
So there are legitimate functions of the borough president, but those are functions that can be handled by city council, as far as appointing people to like city boards. So I am fully behind the plan of Brian Waddell in making reforms to the office of borough president. I am fully behind Devin Balkin as far as bringing open source technology to allow New Yorkers to participate in their government, and I am fully behind Aaron Comey for mayor in order to basically help bring criminal justice to the forefront and education to the forefront of what we are trying to reform here in New York.
So tell us a little bit about your campaign. Do you have some good people working with you? What are the big hurdles to getting elected? And tell us about that. We just have a couple minutes, so tell us how people can find you and how people can help you with your campaign.
The best way to help me with my campaign is to share the videos over there at Alex Merced for NY with the people that you know.
Alex Merced for NY.
I just need to get in front of people, have a conversation with them, and let them hear what I have to say. And I am convinced that people will understand that I'm someone who sincerely wants to tackle these issues and someone who brings a fresh perspective, an independent perspective. But the problem is, as a third-party candidate, it's hard to get on the media because the media doesn't take third parties seriously. So they give you very little media. So that's the biggest thing. How do you reach out to people when the normal way that most people find out who's in the race, how many people actually met Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, but how many people saw them on TV?
Right.
That's the biggest difference. That's the biggest hurdle. But if you help me get out there and introduce people to me and the other Libertarian candidates, we can overcome that. We can rise and we can exceed expectations together.
Can people contribute to your campaign on your website?
Basically, if there is any fundraising opportunities, it would be on the website. I also highly encourage everyone to take a look at Aaron Comey's campaign, Devin Balkin's campaign, Brian Waddell's campaign, which are already up and running as far as fundraising going, and they're running very strong campaigns. They have very strong messages, and I highly recommend people to basically
How about donating to the Libertarian Party in general?
That is also a very good choice.
National party or state party?
I would actually prefer people go over to the Manhattan LP's website at manhattanlp.org or brooklynlp.org for the Brooklyn LP and contribute to them, because when it comes to getting us on the ballot these coming months, there's basically the parties here in New York City are going to be picking up, be pulling a lot of the weight, so they're going to need resources. So I would definitely encourage people to put resources their way.
That's the Manhattan Party and the Brooklyn Party. Is there any closing remarks you'd like to make? We've just got 1 minute left. Any closing remarks? And thank you for coming on our show and helping us celebrate our 10th anniversary of Hardfire TV.
Thank you.
Brooklyn Free Speech.
Anytime.
Any closing remarks, Alex Merced?
Bottom line is just go to alexmercedforny.com, like the Facebook page, Alex Merced for New York. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, especially by messaging the Facebook page. I'm pretty good about responding to questions and giving answers. And thank you very much for listening to this interview today.
Yes, and thank you for discussing public finances with me. I enjoy that very much.
No problem. Anytime. I love it.
Okay. So thank you, Alex, and we'll have you again. And please do look alexmercedforny.com. And help us out. Help the Libertarians to get elected this year. Thank you.
Thank you.